Hey FlossTube, it's Donna Ray here at Flannel Jammies Farm. If you're a new visitor here, welcome. I'm glad you've decided to visit. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much. Sit down and have a cup of tea and let's visit. I have something very special to share with you today, and it'll happen about midway through the video. So hang on, don't go away. We'll see that very shortly. Again, I want to remind you that I normally, when I show my works, here or here, I normally at the end of the video will put close-ups so that you can see a little closer look at what I've done and my stitching and anything that I might have shown. Okay, so many of you have been so kind over the last week or so with charming mentions about me and my channel. I am so blessed by that. I can't thank you enough. Dear Stitchy friends and channels and people that I have looked up to in the FlossTube community have said my name and my channel name on their channel. It's just wonderful, and I want to thank you all. The ones that I know about, and I'm sure there are others, so if you've shouted me out or given me a charming mention, let me know so that I can thank you. Basic Stitches, Yvonne the Night Owl Stitcher, Amy Loves Toads, Helen D, Kellyanne, Bendy Stitchy, Rachel the Cross Stitch Counselor. Thank you, Rachel, so much for your kind words. So many of you on Instagram have said kind things about my channel, and I really, really appreciate it. Now on to some charming mentions of my own. I watched a couple of new FlossTubers this week, and the first one was X Stitch Jen. Jen has been stitching for about 18 years. She works in a laboratory environment, so she's very sciencey. She does cross-stitching, but she also is, in her words, antique and vintage obsessed. She likes to collect some kind of interesting and dark items, and she's become also interested in old letters and photos. She posts those a lot on Instagram, and you can find her there under the name Microlab Jen. And I'll post all those things below. The next one I watched was Leah at Leah Noel. Leah has been stitching since she was a little girl, and her aunt taught her all the fundamentals. She was away from stitching for a while, and she's come back seriously to stitch in the last few years. She has so many whips and beautiful finished pieces, full coverage pieces. Oh my goodness, it was amazing the things that she showed. I also was very happy to see that her dog enjoys the mailman just about as much as our Scarlet does, which is not at all. Not new, but a very favorite of mine is Rebecca at Stitching Becca. Rebecca is in Sweden. She is lovely. She's just returned to work as a preschool teacher after being a stay-at-home mom. She has lovely, lovely stitching pieces. She made the most beautiful project bag for one of them. I'm in love with it, Rebecca. It's gorgeous. And she made a really adorable little apron that goes on a wine bottle. So cute. So cute. Go Stitching Becca. Just go, give her some love, subscribe. You will not be sorry. She's just a calming space on FlossTube. I love it. Other stitchy to-doings. So Tanya of the Scarlet House is coming to Virginia Beach. Dying to Stitch is doing their spring retreat, and Tanya will be our featured designer. I have not seen it, of course, because I'm a participant at the retreat, but a little bird told me that Tanya's exclusive design for this retreat is absolutely stunning. Now, Tanya's work is beautiful all the time. but I'm really excited to see this piece that she's done for us. That retreat is in April. I cannot wait. If you are coming to that retreat, let me know, say hi. When you get there, introduce yourself, and let's chat together, let's stitch together, let's have fun together. It's going to be a wonderful time. All right, I have a fully finished object. I know, isn't it wonderful? I stitched, if you remember, Tish had created a design for the Reading and Stitch Along, Jane Austen Reading and Stitch Along group on Facebook. And it was for, we were reading Sense and Sensibility. And it was for that book, and it was called I Will Be Calm. And I had stitched it on this mystery linen in Gloriana silk, and it kind of laid on the back of the chair beside me for weeks after I finished. Like, what am I going to do with this? So the other day I journeyed into Mordor, or as we know it, Walmart. Went in and browsed around looking for some inspiration, something to do with this piece, and I found it. In their crafting section, they had these wooden boards with a string for you to hang. And I bought 2 of them. Here's the first one, and it's just blank, so I can show you. It's whitewashed. It's kind of a box, and it's whitewashed wood, and it's got a string rope hanger, okay? So I brought this one home, and I also brought home its cousin, who was kind of the darker wood tone. And I turned that into my FFO. So here's my piece, right? And it's I Will Be Calm. I didn't trim the bottom or the top. I left them a little bit longer just in case I want to FFO this piece in a different way in the future. So I went ahead and stapled my stitched piece to this board. And then on the side, I added some beautiful silk ribbon that was in my bowl of leftover ribbon scraps. So I added that all the way around, right? And then I added this white lace. And so when I got this lace home, it was blindingly white. It was like Tide with bleach commercial white. So I gave it a quick dip in my husband's coffee. Don't tell him. And toned it down just enough so it was really nice for this project. And I think it makes a lovely, lovely, simple finish. Again, kind of rope hanger, and it will hang on my wall. Okay, so I also have a whip, a work in progress. As you know, I had a little bit of market haul. And one of my favorite things was Heartstring Samplery's Thou God Seest Me. I love this piece from Beth. We talked about this in my last video, how much I love this piece and the story behind it, the scripture behind it. And so I had to kit it up pretty much immediately and begin. So here is my beginning. Okay. And I've just started on the cottage at the bottom of the design. So I laid in the roof and the chimney stacks. And the first thing that I did after that was to lay in all the mortar. The reason that I do the mortar first and not the bricks first, the mortar is often either white or a much lighter color than the bricks. And so if I laid the bricks in first, and let's say they're red or a dark red, and then I start pulling the white or light color through to stitch the mortar, I'm pulling that against those darker threads time after time after time. And each time I'm picking up bits of fiber from those darker threads onto my lighter threads. And so rather than do that, I go ahead and put the lighter colored mortar in place on my house. And then I add the bricks. The other thing you'll notice, so I've started adding bricks right down here in the lower corner. My friend Pat Ryan told me that I should lay in the bricks kind of diagonally. Instead of putting the bricks like doing this whole row and then this whole row and then this whole row, because we're working with over-dyed threads, which have variegation, if I put a couple of bricks here and then a brick over here and then a brick up here and then a brick over here, working diagonally or a little bit more randomly, that's going to give you the look of real bricks. As you know, sometimes when you have bricks, when you're building a home, not all of them are the same exact shade. And so to give you that realistic look of bricks, kind of jump around as you're doing it. Basically, it's because Pat Ryan said so. And I do whatever Pat Ryan says. Speaking of Pat Ryan, here comes our exciting thing today. It's a very special treat. I have had so much trouble with ironing in the past. I would finish my work and I would iron it and I would iron it and I would try all these different things to iron it. And I would still have these creases in it or hoop marks or whatever. And then I'd iron it and I'd think it would look pretty good. And then within a few weeks, I could see those marks again. And I didn't know what was going on. So I finally bemoaned my fate one day at Dying to Stitch. Oh, I can't get my ironing right. Blah. And Ann and Pat were so kind, and Pat said, oh, well, you just do this and this and this and this. No big deal. So today we have a special treat. Pat is going to give us a lesson on ironing. She allowed me to come over to her house and film her giving us some ironing lessons. You may not know this, but Pat Ryan is R&R Reproductions linen. She dyes and dries and irons all day long. Yards and yards and yards of linen. Who better to tell us how to iron our works properly when they're all done? So, here's going to be a little clip of Pat Ryan and I chatting about ironing, and then I'll be back to tell you a little bit more. So, I am here with my friend, historian, designer, veteran, author, the woman, Stitcher. Oh my goodness, Stitcher. There are so many titles for Pat. Pat is a very good friend, and she has agreed to film a ironing lesson with us so that we can see the best way to iron our pieces once they're done. So I give you Pat Ryan. So Pat, what's the first thing we have to know?
The first thing you need to know is you need as much padding on the ironing board as you can get. This pad comes from Bed Bath & Beyond, and let's see if I can get the end to come up.
Need some help?
Yeah, maybe. That a girl. You see the padding here gives you an extra pad, which you really need.
It's really
believe it
thick
or not.
And squishy, and yeah.
This pad costs probably about $50, but it velcros underneath so that it's nice and tight on your ironing board, which is what you want.
Yep.
It's worth the money, not just for your stitching, but for your clothing as well. It's going to make the iron glide
Ooh, nice.
way better. So
We'll be pressed for success.
we'll be pressed, yes. So then I go to Walmart and buy a nice beach towel. You don't have to spend $1 million on it, but you want it to be, again, a little bit thick so that it works.
So again, squishy.
Yes. So then just lay it over your ironing board, smooth it out, and then you get these handy dandy clips for like $2. My clips are getting a little worn.
They look like old-fashioned garter clips.
Yes, they do. And you get two long and a short. The short would go up at the top of your piece. The bottom would be a bottom and a middle one to hold this on. Now,
I see. So it clips to either side of the towel.
Yeah, it clips to either side of the towel. I'll let you clip the bottom.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go around this side.
So we're going to clip it on so that it will stay in place once we start ironing, hopefully.
We're getting our little ironing board workout here.
Yes. Now, you want to change your towel, probably if you iron a lot, once a week.
Okay.
It would depend on how much spray starch or whatever you use for wrinkles.
Okay.
Also, if your iron gets dirty and bubbles up, you want to change that.
Ew.
You don't want anything on your fabric, which
Okay.
could happen very easily.
Okay.
So you don't want that. You want to be able to change it. So, pretty quick here, Walmart will start having beach towels, and they won't be expensive. Go buy 2 so that you can go ahead and always keep one in reserve in case you have a bubble up from your iron, which does happen. Okay, I'm going to go get the iron.
Okay. So, good pad, good beach towel, or not so good beach towel, but nice and squishy. Get it flat on there, and here's the iron. I'm going to trade places with the ironing queen. Are you right-handed?
I am.
So I need to be over here.
Okay, so I use a Shark iron, and it's like $29, $39 from Walmart or Amazon. I happen to like Amazon because they deliver. But you can see all the steam plate, and that's what you want when you're ironing. You want your steam plate to have a lot of
Lots
steam
of
holes.
holes.
Right. And you have an adjustment here for whether you want to have a little bit of steam or a lot of steam. You also have one for extra puffs of steam.
Okay.
You don't want to hit the water one.
Right.
If possible.
Right.
You'd really rather not do that.
Because let's stop and chat about that for a second. So some of our flosses say color fast. Some of them do
Absolutely.
not. So tell us a little
I
bit
would
about
always, even if they say it's color fast, you can always have a runoff.
that. Okay.
And that's not anybody's fault. It's just when you rinse at the end of the cycle, it doesn't, some of it's folded over. It may not all rinse out. You can also spray your spray starch on it. That could make it run. Water could make it run.
Oh, okay.
Don't believe anything. Now, I called once because I needed a sampler to run when I was doing a reproduction, and I called DMC and said, what can I do to make this run? They said, hairspray.
Really?
Yeah, which was a little odd, and it didn't work.
Oh.
No, all the things they told me it would work didn't work. So you can be color fast. But you definitely want to err on the side of it's going to run.
Okay. So now why, you and I know, everybody, that there are irons out there that cost,
Hundreds of dollars.
$200, $400. So Ann and Pat have this Shark, right? Pat irons with this Shark all the time. What I didn't tell you is that Pat is the dye pot queen. She is this is R&R Reproductions linen right here beside me. Woo!
Yeah.
So she irons fabric all day. That's what she does. So I'm
Boring.
So my question is then, Pat, why not have a $400, $500 iron? Why do a $29 Shark?
Because the $29 Shark is going to last as long as the $400 iron, and eventually they're going to wear out. I wear an iron out on the average of once every 3 months because I iron so much with it. And
Even with the very expensive ones.
yes. I had
So-
one with a tank, and it's still tanked after about 5 months, and that was a $400 iron with a tank that sat next to me on a stool. It still didn't help. So
Oh my goodness.
the biggest thing is you want a lot of steam holes. The second biggest thing is non-drip iron.
Oh.
Because you don't want a big puddle in the middle of whatever you're stitching or your clothing.
Right.
Non-drip. If it doesn't say non-drip, you don't want it. I don't care how much it costs. If it's $19.99, for me, I want a lightweight iron.
Right.
I don't want an iron that weighs 10 tons. So you might want to go somewhere where you can actually heft them. And when you try different irons, like at Walmart, that's the only place I can think of that they have a group out, you can tell some of them are so heavy, you'd have fatigue in 10 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
So you want an iron that's kind of lightweight. You want to fill it all the way up on the water thing.
Oh.
Do not go over the water thing, or you will have, even with an anti-drip, it's going to come out.
Okay.
So you want to make sure you get only to that point.
Okay.
And then you have a dial, and on the dial, at the very end, is linen and cotton. And that's what you want your setting on.
Okay.
It'll take a minute, we'll hear the iron click.
Okay.
And when it clicks, then it's ready to go.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes it makes steam, sometimes it doesn't. It's all in how it feels that day. But
so I'm so sorry.
no, I was just going to say the bad part about a shark, when it's ready to give itself up, you'll find that you'll have smoke signals. Unplug it immediately and don't use it again. That's my best advice.
Time to call Amazon Prime.
Yes.
Okay. So, Pat, I heard it click,
Yep.
so it must be warm. When we get our fabric home, we've gone and we've picked out our fabric, or we've gone online and we've gotten our fabric delivered. We take it out of the package, or we take it out of our bag, and it has some crease marks. But I can go ahead and start stitching, right?
I would not.
Oh.
First of all, even if it's not a dyed fabric, any fabric, you don't know how long it's been on a bolt or cut and folded. You don't know how long that fold mark has been there. Every fabric that's made has a memory.
Okay.
So it remembers being folded. You have to take the memory away by ironing it out.
Ah.
If you don't, eventually, even though you iron it at the end, it looks great. In 6 months, you're going to see the halo of where your hoop was or whatever. And I don't care if you're the best framer in the world, and Sherry and Terry certainly are. They can't keep that from happening.
Yeah.
I don't care who your framer is. You have to get the fabric prepared ahead.
Okay. So when we bring it home, iron it right away.
Or iron it
start
before you
stitching.
start your project.
Okay.
Absolutely. I always have a project ironed ahead.
Okay.
With all the fiber pulled. So when I finish a project at like 9 at night, I don't have to think about what I'm going to do next. I just get the next piece of fabric and start.
Okay.
So you want to iron your fabric. You can use spray starch. I don't recommend you use the other things that the people talk about, only because you don't know what's in it. You don't know what's in it that could make your floss run when you do this at the very end.
Okay.
If you do your fabric correctly the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and this includes taking your hoop off every single night, because if you don't, again, you have a hoop mark. Now some hoops are tighter than others. You can pop it so it isn't on there tightly, because we all go, oh yeah, I'm coming back 10 minutes, I'll be back. And 2 days, 3 days later, you still haven't gone back to it.
Right.
All that time, that fabric has been pressed inside there.
Yeah.
So now you have this perfect little round circle. How are you going to get it out?
Ah.
So you want everything pristine the first go, so that you know it'll come out again. If you've gotten the wrinkles out once, you'll get them out when you're ready to stop stitching.
Okay.
If I'm going to put a project down for a long period of time, I iron it, even if it isn't complete.
Ah.
And let it
tip.
relax over a quilt rack or wherever. Some people take safety pins on a hanger and hang it. Whatever you want to do, but that just helps the fabric to keep no more wrinkles.
Okay, great.
I'm going to go get a spray starch.
Okay, we'll be back with you in one moment, and we'll be ironing. Okay, so we're back, and we're going to show you some pieces that have been stitched, some fabric that has been wrinkled, and you're going to get a chance to see how Pat would go about ironing these things for the very best outcome. So Pat, here you have a piece that I stitched for the Jane Austen Reading and Stitch Along, and this one is for the Pride and Prejudice piece. If you all remember the Keira Knightley rendition of this movie, the Dame Dench comes in and says, "Obstinate, headstrong girl." I just love it. It's the most wonderful thing. So, Pat, show us how to iron.
Okay, the first thing I want you to notice, see the crease here? If you hadn't ironed this crease out, think how hard it would be to get your stitch correct when you have a crease in the middle of your stitch. You really want a nice smooth background to stitch on. So this is the other reason, besides your fabric having a memory, you want that. The other thing that I do, and this is just my peculiarity, is all these little threads, I would get rid of them.
Okay.
And that is because when you're stitching, you don't want to get your hoop or whatever caught in those, your thread or your hoop.
Okay.
So number one, the first thing we would do is flip this over, because we're not going to iron it on the front.
Okay.
We're only going to iron on the back.
Okay.
I'm using spray starch.
Okay.
The first thing you do is spray away, so that if there's any kind of a clog, you're not going to get it on your fabric.
Okay.
The clog is going to go away.
Okay.
The other thing is, if you look at this piece, and it's going to be a little tricky, do you see it's almost open in the fold like a book would open?
Yep.
That's the way you want to iron it. But this is the front of the piece. So for this, we're going to turn it over
Okay.
for the tent peaks. Actually, when you're first ironing the fabric, like this piece is pristine, we don't iron the tent peak. We're going to iron the fold like a book.
Okay.
Because if you iron the tent peak first, you're actually ironing that wrinkle in.
Okay.
Even though it magically disappears, it'll magically come back.
So you open it like a book.
Open it like a book, and then you want to spray starch along the book crease.
And I noticed you held that starch about 18 inches away.
Right. And look at how smooth
Ooh.
your fabric becomes. And a lot of that is due in part to the fact that we're using a steam iron. But look at that. That's one go.
That's
beautiful. One go. So I always iron both sides because you never know.
Perfect.
If you get a blob, just iron it first. Usually it doesn't have time to absorb into the piece.
Oh, so when you're spraying your starch, sometimes you just get that extra little...
It looks like a raindrop.
Yep.
Get that first.
Okay.
Okay, so look how beautiful that wrinkled piece of fabric is.
That is gorgeous.
Now to start, I have a beautiful blank canvas to stitch on. So because Donna Ray actually did iron this piece before,
yes,
we don't have to worry as much about the tent peaks this time.
Okay.
Okay, now ordinarily I might use a cloth over this because it's Gloriana red thread, but we're going to hope for the best.
Okay.
And I'm going to spray away again, just a light mist over it. You don't need to do it heavily. Okay. And again, look how it just takes all your wrinkles out. And I would tell you, 90% of this is the padding.
Wow.
And a good iron. Because if you do this on a not so padded ironing board, you're not going to get those great results that you get with the more padding, the better. Princess and the Pea. Think of that.
Yep.
So look how pretty that is now.
That is gorgeous, Pat.
So it's well worth it. When you're going to show it online, I know we're so excited to show our pieces. I know people apologize for not ironing. It's such a nice presentation to iron it before you do.
Wow.
Really, you want to give your piece the best possible light to show it in. So take that 5 minutes, even if it's the following day. Try and do that first. But that's the kind of result you're looking for. I would actually go as far on this piece, if I were going to start stitching on it, to trim so I didn't have any of these little fringes. And all this is gone so that my thread doesn't get caught in any of that.
Ah, smart.
So I sometimes cut it or have it cut a little bit bigger than I would ordinarily do it. So I can trim it down and keep it the right size.
Okay, perfect.
So that's kind of what you get.
So now, Pat, if you have a larger piece, I see you have a larger piece of pretty wrinkly linen there. It's a nice...
And see, you have 10 peaks and you don't have 10 peaks.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to go with what has the most 10 peaks. Since there seems to be more this way, I would turn it over so we have more creases on this side.
Okay.
So you kind of want to look at both sides. If you're using the hand dyed, obviously there's a right and wrong side, but you don't have anything on it yet.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter. You're going by what your creases are telling you.
Okay.
So again, you
listen to your
spray.
fabric.
Listen to your fabric will tell you how to iron it if you let it.
Nice. So now I had always thought, I came back to stitching after many years. And when I stitched, decades ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth and dirt was new.
Okay, if you did it when dinosaurs did, what did I do? I was the waitress at the Last Supper? I don't know. See, there you go.
That's beautiful. We were always told, when you're done, wash your piece.
Oh, good Lord, don't wash anything.
Wrap it in a towel.
Yep.
And that was not the case when I came back to stitching.
Because of all the overdyes, both your thread and your linen, you don't want to do that.
Okay.
You're pushing the envelope if you do that. So there's your nice pristine piece of linen. There's what it looks like wrinkled.
That is stunning. And that was just one pass.
Yep.
Now, everybody, if you're like me, before I knew Pat and was able to really learn from her, I would spend 20, 30 minutes trying to iron the wrinkles out of my pieces. And I finally one day said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And Pat said, oh, just do this, this, and this. Now she's shared it with all of us, which we're so thankful for. I do want to ask one more question, Pat. You're using a steam iron. So how is that different from wetting the piece? Is it that there just isn't enough moisture there?
Right.
Or
There's
is
not
it the
enough
padding?
moisture. You have an anti-drip. You're able to control by how much water you put in, how much steam. And if you get halfway on your iron, you're not going to have as much steam, so you are going to have a little more trouble getting the wrinkles out.
And that's
So
why we fill it all the way
That's
up.
why you want it filled, and you want to keep it. You don't have to fill it every time you iron a piece, but I iron on average 25 to 35 yards a day. I can't spend 20 minutes a day on each piece. I'd be here until Methuselah came back. So it has to be quick. That's one reason for the padding. I do not use spray starch on the yards that I iron for distributors and shops.
Okay.
Unless it's extremely stubborn, which people look at my fabric when it's dyed and say it's wrinkly. Some of that is the way I mash it together when I'm dyeing it, and those are wrinkles that are actually part of the process of dyeing. It's not a wrinkle. It's actually the way the coffee or the dye has taken into the fabric.
It's the modeling of the dye. Okay.
And if you're trying to do an antique, it isn't a pristine piece.
Right.
You can see here there are little dots of what would be dirt. Well, that's vintage looking. And that's in there so that if you were doing a sampler, it would have the stains that an old sampler would have. We're not trying to kid anybody, but we're trying to give you the closest possible look of an old sampler as we can.
Right. Right.
So that's why you want all the tools that you need. You want your spray starch, lightly spray starch, even if you have to do it 2 times, so what? You want to have the padding, you want to have your towel, you want to have your iron that's non-drip and that's got steam and a lot of steam vents.
One more thing, and then we'll close. I remember you telling me to be sure that my starch or pressing spray, whatever it is unscented. What's the reasoning behind that?
Okay, we can't smell the scent after a bit. You could put it to your nose, you won't smell it, but the bugs can.
Bugs?
If you're in any kind of an area like in the south, there are a lot of little creepy crawlies.
Yes.
If they get in the back of your frame, they're being attracted by the scent that you have in your spray starch. So you want good old-fashioned Niagara, original, no scent. It's nice to have lavender. It's nice to have all those other scents. The bugs will love you. And even though it's well padded, it's well glued in the back, they still can find their way in. You don't want to give them a reason to try and find a way in. So
Okay.
just plain old spray starch is really what is recommended.
Okay, great. Okay, so Pat, I want to thank you so much for giving us all of your knowledge. You're so generous, so kind. When you call Dying to Stitch, Ann and Pat are lovely. You can ask them any question, and they are always so giving of their time and knowledge, their experience. These ladies know more about samplers and fabric and threads than anyone I've ever met. And I just so appreciate your time.
You're welcome. And there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Amen. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye. So the ones closest to you are beach brew, and the other ones are weathered shingle. And these are going to Hoffman.
What did you think? Was it pretty fun? Did you learn anything? I sure did. Here's that piece that I tricked Pat into ironing for me. This is another design that I did for the Jane Austen Reading and Stitch Along group on Facebook. Our next segment, we're reading Pride and Prejudice, one of my very favorites. And this is from that book, and you heard a little bit about that in the video. I've stitched it again in my very favorite Gloriana silk in poinsettia. It's my favorite color. It's my favorite thread. I love it so much. So it says obstinate, headstrong girl. Great. So I also showed you in the video very quickly Pat Ryan's book. She is an author. Here's your book. It is Historic Samplers selected from museums and historic homes with 30 cross-stitch charts for authentic reproduction. This book is amazing. Okay, Pat spent 5 years researching these samplers. They're all from America, from the 18th and very early 19th century, and then creating charts, reproduction charts, so that they could be faithfully reproduced in modern times for us. This book is such a great resource. It gives the 30 samplers a chart for each one with DMC thread listing, full color photographs of not only the full chart, but also she zooms in on different areas to show you specific things. She tells you the story of the child who stitched each piece. In the very back, there's a listing of mottos and verses that were on samplers in those times. It is the most beautiful resource. I love that it tells you how to stitch every single type of stitch that's in these samplers. So there are full instructions in there too. I want to show you, I'm not going to do a full flip through of this book, but I wanted to show you a few of my favorites. This one is Betty Washington Lewis's. This is George Washington's great niece, and she was named for his only sister. And so look at how beautiful that is. And you can see it tells you the story on the opposite page. There's a chart for that. You can stitch it yourself. A DMC listing. It's not like you have to go out and buy overdyes or expensive silks to do this. It's very easy. A little further along in the book, this one is done by a young man. And it says his workmanlike marking sampler was a lesson in patience for a boy. Look at this. Done by a boy. There aren't many that were done by boys. This one was. And I think it's just charming, don't you? Next, look at this one. This is Susanna Bartholomew with Pennsylvania Dutch motifs. That is lovely. So clean and simple. Gotta stitch it. A little further along, this one is Rachel Ellicott, and I love the colors in this. Just very, very beautiful. And again, her story right there beside it. So amazing. And this one is Hannah Atkins, a gentle Quaker from Cape Cod, celebrates her love of nature. Look at that. So beautiful. Oh, I just love this book. This book is available on Amazon. It's out of print, I believe, but you can still get copies. As a matter of fact, I got a copy that actually had autographed dedication in here from Pat, which is wonderful. So, Historic Samplers by Patricia Ryan. Get yourself one. Lastly, today I wanted to tell you about something you asked about. Several of you asked about the piece that was behind me as I filmed in my last video. It's also in the intro piece of all of my videos. And you asked, what is that? That bunny is so cute. I gotta know what that is. And here it is. This is Lori Brecklin from Not Forgotten Farms. Ah, 'tis spring. This bunny is precious. I love this piece so very much. And it was one of the first ones I did when I started coming back to stitching really hard. It was done in 2015, and I know that because I've hidden my initials and the year into the stems of the flowers, so I know it was done in 2015. I started this with threads that I had on hand. I have no idea what they were. I think they were even Sullivan. I don't know how they got in my stash, but I think that's what they were. So I started stitching this teal dress, which took me ages to stitch. And it became clear about this far down that I was going to run out of this teal thread before the dress was done. So do I shorten the dress? Do I try somehow to find this thread again, dealing with dye lot changes and all of that? I didn't know what to do. So then the idea struck me that I would take some of the colors in the design and add some stripes at the bottom of her dress. This was a great happy accident. I actually love the striping and how it turned out. I'll leave the link below for this design. Lori has a Etsy shop for Not Forgotten Farm, and she's actually got a store on her farm here in Virginia. So if you ever get the chance and you're near Amherst, Virginia, you can pop by there on a Saturday. Friends, it's been so much fun to spend time with you today. I really appreciate that you spent part of your day with me here at table. I wish that you could all come and sit and have a cup of tea, and we could chat about these beautiful Easter eggs, and we could talk about what we're going to serve for Easter, and we could go outside and smell the lilacs that are blooming. It would be so wonderful. But until that time, have a good stitchy week. Don't forget that I have close-ups coming at the end of the video. And, as always, I invite you to be the grace and the kindness that you want to see in our world. Bye-bye.
If I just say the words, is that enough to make them true? If I just say the words, well, you know that I love you. I try to open up my heart so that you can see the truth. If I just say the